Okay. Well, let's get started on our water committee agenda. That's something that we can talk about afterwards. Welcome everybody. It is September 27th. It is the right time and the right place for water committee. And I will do the roll call, and we've got Bill Bradford here.
Present.
Dean Brady.
Present.
Beth is here. Doug is not. Blake is not. Tim Payne is. Commissioner Dwayne McFall is here. Tim Dennehy is not here, and I am here.
Nice.
Jump in with the cops and you're.
Yeah, but they're doing records now. For the new software. For the new 911
That sounds boring.
Water's much more exciting.
Yes.
Actually, it can be pounding at times. Okay,
I saw him in there and went the other way.
let's see, our old business, we got us a draft well ordinance, and Travis, you want to bring us up to date on where we are right now?
Sure. So that went before Vision Committee. A few more red lines were suggested. I was having some back and forth with the attorneys, and it was decided to go ahead and push it a couple of weeks to get a little more clarity. They had more questions on those red lines and the purpose behind them. So I think I'm going to get a proper meeting with them,
Okay,
or start an email chain with 2 council members and them. So there could be a little dialogue.
okay.
Yeah.
So there's some discussion. So the ordinance that the Vision Committee suggested went to council.
Yep.
There were some further edits at that point,
Mhm.
more or less kind of just wording type stuff.
Yeah, just like grammar.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
was.
Wording, okay.
It was,
So nothing significant.
Let's
That's
see.
my feeling too. It was not really significant, but now the attorneys have their teeth into it and they want to chew a little bit.
That is true. So these are the red lines that came from the, for all the seeing impaired. These are the ones that came from the Vision Committee, as well as everything else that's been talked about. These are all the red lines.
Yeah.
And so from the Vision, really all that came is that is connected to the city's water system.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. And then there was a couple of typos, really. I get the feeling that the attorneys think it's a little wordy, and our attempts at clarifying are doing the opposite.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So
Okay.
I think I just need to have a conversation with them and tell them what our intent is and what, what we wanted to say in the end, and however they want to word that, great. We have 2 readings to go. So there's plenty of chances for input still.
We adopted it on first reading?
No, it just went through Vision Committee. It has to go through both readings yet.
I thought it was before council too.
We introduced it.
At Vision Committee. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we discussed it here and then Vision Committee.
We've talked about it 3 times so far. We have 2 to go.
I was gonna say, I've seen it on the Monday meeting. I thought I'd seen it there. Well, you guys discussed it at the regular council meeting.
We introduced it at a council meeting, then it went to Vision Committee.
Yes.
So it wasn't.
Yeah, and so it will not be on the next council meeting, because I wanted to get a little more tight before we brought it before first reading.
An attorney say this is worded?
Yeah.
So they're already doing that.
So that's the update on that.
Whereas in there. So what else is it?
Yeah. So
I thought the clarification was good.
Yeah, I like it simple where it actually means something. You can
Right.
read it and understand it, what it
Right.
means. It's
more
like,
to follow.
yeah, it's like.
We'll see. It depends. Which attorney are you talking with?
Catherine.
Okay. They do have their own requirements and they're good attorneys, I think.
I would agree.
We'll see what suggestions they make.
Is that the water attorney or is that the city?
City attorney.
City attorney.
Yep.
So she's kind of a specialist in ordinances and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
That's that. She's got some concerns. We'll hear them when we know what they are. Okay, so that's on track. The attorney's gonna turn the wheel a little bit on that. we've got, does anybody have anything on the standing committee topics that you'd like to share? They are source water, stormwater, legislative updates. We don't have any subject matter experts today, except for us, and topics for council. Does anybody have anything that they'd like?
Where are we on Rhodes Avenue for stormwater?
I believe we have all the permissions. But now we're waiting for the end of the irrigation system.
That's correct. Yeah,
Is where I think.
and I think we've got a hard date for shut off, and we're just waiting for that. I couldn't tell you what the date is. I think it's November, early November. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all.
Once that's shut off, then it probably won't take long.
No, it won't. That's just the.
A lot of it's the water line, the bore for the water line.
Right.
underneath the railroad.
Underneath the railroad.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That'll be good to get that at that.
Yes.
That
Yes.
helps both city and county.
That's the big changes there. And that's really one of our first big stormwater quantity projects that since I've been on council, let me put it that way, because there's been other ones. I mean, we've got the Abbey Basin and stuff like that that's been constructed in the past, but this is the biggest one since I've been on council.
So the one legislative thing I'd seen, did you send that out or was it Tim that
No,
sent out?
I sent out.
I looked, I'm like, what, it was a pain, but, you know, like with the legislature that they're trying to pass or wanting to bring up with no new lawns and new developments.
Right.
You know, that seems a little extreme, but, you know, more of a front range, you know, type of issue to me, like Denver and Springs and those that are, you know, growing immensely and already huge, that they have water concerns. I mean, the legislature, if it's passed at a state level, would that come into here where new developments is what I read, not just new builds, but new developments would not be allowed any turf. Ornamental grasses, all that, of course, that would still exist, but not turf themselves, or they have a designated area, like a park area set aside that would be for all the public to use. Those areas could have grass. I mean, I think there's a new development in Car Springs opening up. They said it could be as many as 50,000 people that they're wanting to do. Like, and that came hearsay through my wife that read an article on it, more low income housing or regular, but it's going to be a very concentrated area, but it would have just a grass area, a common area, but then no lawns necessarily, you know, and that's where looking at this, I mean, kind of going forward a little bit to the rate increase, you know, I know rate increases of water went up 9% last year, and it was at 9% the year prior,
And 9% the year before that.
and 9. So I mean, we've got considerable raises in water rates versus that. I mean, I know we'll get to this probably further in the meeting, so I'm kind of stuff there. But the legislature that's coming out of the big ones, you know, in the state is, you know, turf. I'm like, man, when does a lawn become a luxury item? I mean, it's what it's getting there, you know,
It's getting there.
and it's a hobby. I mean, it's like fishing, you know, fly fishing is one of my hobbies, or golf for that matter, and it's related, all in water. And my gosh, I didn't have a hole in one, I had a birdie the other day, but then I was fishing, I caught a nice 17-inch out in front of my house, which is really cool. I'm like, hey, water's great.
So
you know,
you also bought a lottery ticket, right?
well, that's what I should have, because I'm like, I just spent $85 on new line for my reel and $100 for a pitching wedge, you know, it's like.
So on the issue,
What's that? Yeah,
So
that's
you're
a
hiring?
shame. Yeah.
on the issue of what, you know, what's driving this, I think the driver for looking at what has to be watered and what doesn't, and what you should allow in terms of zoning and stuff like that, is really being driven by the over appropriation of the Colorado. And I think that and even the Arkansas, right? In Arkansas.
So that was
Yeah.
So is that true? I've heard the rumors of the Arkansas being really Well, and I was waiting to see if there was a guest speaker that came on, like the water commission or whatever, is it true? And at what rate, what CFS rating, because they're like, well, if it's running high, it's 20, but if it's running low, like now, that's where the reappropriation or the appropriation is at. It's like, well, is it really
Yeah, and I
that?
don't know what
over?
that is, but it's just way over.
Is,
appropriated.
so it is
All
way
right now.
over. of
And it
what-
probably depends on who you ask, whether you're asking Colorado or Kansas.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
hear from
Yeah,
a lot of
it's
people.
Yep.
Ditch board meetings or just water in general, everybody's like, well, it's so over appropriated. I mean, how could you either go more or less, or if somebody were to call or take their water, for instance, if of any of these that could do it, once at one time, it's like all of a sudden we have a trickle. Not from us down, but from us down there, it's just, it'd be pretty crazy. But
So that's really, to me, that's really kind of meat and potatoes for us as a committee. Because we do know that water in general is over appropriated. Okay, our surface water runoff is over appropriated. And the legislature is already moving towards restrictions. Okay, and it seems to me that it would be really great for us to use this committee to look at what other jurisdictions are doing and see what seems appropriate, what seems reasonable, without going too crazy, to be able to suggest something to council. And there's and I'm thinking of ornamental lawn type stuff. I'm not thinking agriculture or anything like that, because they've got their own dog in the fight, I think. But as from the city's perspective, we're not an agricultural entity, but we do supply water for people in gardens and all that kind of stuff. And that, it seems to me that would be really good for us to look at and see if we can identify some things out there that other people are doing that might make sense to implement here before we're forced to. I mean, if they're common sense, then, if you're forced, that's one thing. I mean, I'm always leery about the state starting to issue dictates from their level, but are there things that make sense that we could do? I mean, one of the things, like, for instance, we've got lawn right out here on this backside of City Hall. Do we really need it there? Or would a zero escape be better there?
Yeah, you'd have to eliminate that before you tell somebody else to eliminate theirs.
Yeah.
Is there a species or a blend that is less needy for water
Yes.
or drought tolerant
There is
Yes.
that
some.
we would recommend, and you would get a break for having? So I own a home in Pueblo, and I bought a full sun mix. I barely watered this stuff, but it grows a little bit, it stops. Now that I've watered it, it kind of greened up. But I'm pretty happy with it.
Is that a grass or what is it?
It's a grass.
It's grass.
And
huh?
now,
It
do
came
you know
from
what?
the W word. And I don't normally shop there. But I bought it at that big place here, everywhere in America, which I don't care for anymore, but the store I'm talking about. But they have a grass that seems to work well, that doesn't need a lot of watering to survive. It doesn't have a lot of growth. It looks nice. You don't need to cut it a lot.
Well, Bermuda grass, for instance, is
Here's our
it's a
expert.
warm season grass that back in the 60s was the miracle grass. Everybody planted it like up in this area, college and all that, and it took over. So then it was like, well, we're getting down. I carried Bermuda grass this year for the first time in 29 years, because it's what people need in some areas. I don't want them to do it at a neighbor that their lawns connect. I don't want it to take over, but in areas that are protected and rural and they just want some grass, like one gentleman was like, I have a solar panel in my backyard. It's awfully hot. but I don't want to use a lot of water. It's on the north side, so that was a perfect example of, okay, Bermuda grass would work really well for you. It doesn't grow. You cut it once a month.
Yeah.
But the one thing that would not be good is it goes dormant. It goes very brown during the winter. But it's still cover. So cover is better than no cover versus say rock. You know, that's the bane of my existence is people ripping out all the stuff like in Dawson, they're ripping out the natural habitat, the natural grasses like drama, putting in rock and then wondering why the junipers that have been there 100 years are dying. Well, they're losing their natural cover, you know, and they're just getting exposed. So it's not that you have to put in lawn, but don't rip out and then water is drying. It's also heat, you know, global warming is not exactly helpful to, like you're saying on the south side here, like there's city workers out here that take breaks. Now, that area, it's probably going a long way in trying to cool that down a little bit to where city employees that are using that actually have a little bit of comfort in that, because it'll lower, like mine last night, I was in my field in my bottom, which is a hay field that's next to the river, and it was 10 degrees difference between my top tier and my bottom tier, 10 degrees. And, you know, I was walking my cat, which is another story, but.
One of those guys, huh?
Well, it's my.
It's got a cat on a
my
leash,
cat.
eh?
But yeah, don't try to watch the cat. But anyway, but he went running up and down, but I was like, and I felt it, so I went and got my phone and did a temperature reading,
Yeah.
10 degrees.
Yeah, that's a good example of the cycle of rock versus grass, temperature change, soil retention. People downstream, I'm a Dawson Ranch resident. Everybody up there has rock. I'm concerned about soil erosion. We would love to have grass near the home to cool the home and lower those temperatures. Also pet owners, dogs, not cats, nonetheless. But we're trying to get a grass in there that we don't have to water all the time, cut all the time, but cool it near the house so we're not burning as much energy to cool the house. But what do?
Trees is another thing, you know, shade trees, that's a huge, trees are the
Again,
answer.
we'd
in a
like
lot
to
of
do
these
that,
places, too.
however, you know, this takes time.
That's the problem, we don't live forever.
I'm worried about
Bigger
foundation,
trees are better.
you know, I want something that'll grow, but either way, what grass is gonna work well in this community, it's not gonna cause a problem for your neighbor. It probably, there's a lot of crabgrass. And when you spend a little money on your grass and the neighbor guy has this crabgrass stuff blowing in and then it just takes over your lawn, there's some disgruntled neighborhoods going on, right? So what's gonna work best in the community, but help the environment?
Like you were
So you got,
at that
okay.
point.
That's
yeah.
it, and
You
that's
guys,
why
I
I did
think we
it off,
probably
but-
need to, this is,
yeah.
you guys are going into minute detail about something I don't think is
Well,
even really the subject
like-
that, I mean, we talked about it, but there's so much more issues that besides just grass growing in places that need to be looked at. I mean, I can go on the other side of this whole argument and show you a whole bunch of facts about places that are needed to reduce their water consumption, who bought back all the turf and have saved billions of gallons of water by buying back the turf in areas where it's not necessarily, or the fact that, like, you know, a lot of people, when they come to an area like down here, and I see we're living in arid southern Colorado, and I'm like, well, at least these guys didn't plant a whole bunch of big lawns, wasting a bunch of water. You know, I mean, I think this is one factor of the water, but before that, I mean, there's much huger issues that we need to look at about, you know, the fact of, you know, if we look at future development in this area, you know, what is our water usage just for home consumption? You know, what laws do we have in place as far as water consumption in a house, appliances, toilets? I mean, I think we probably have all those in place, just like, I mean, because that's part of the building code. But I'm just saying that I think we need to move the discussion.
Right.
So back to this legislation, now, this is the same bill they tried to run last year?
I think it is. They're trying, Roberts, Senator Roberts.
Yeah, so Roberts, what are they trying to make it a mandate, or are they just doing this for the Front Range where those guys are out of water already because they're growing so big?
Near as I could tell, and it was just discussion on what could be proposed for the legislative session, is Colorado wide. Yeah, on lawns, not ag.
Yeah, I don't think the legislature should tell any city what to do. They do have a problem up there, but you guys don't here. I think it should be dictated here, but if they do a mandate, then you're kind of screwed unless your charter says something different. But I think that's where you gotta focus is if you wanna implement that on new construction or new
New
subdivisions.
development, yeah.
There's somebody outside the door. Is it locked?
Are they allowing the people, if you have the money, you can buy regardless?
Up there?
Anywhere.
Up there, no.
See, that's what they're trying to get away from,
Yeah,
is money talks, they're trying to get away from that.
some of those cities have already restricted it. The water division.
Chairs, if you'd like.
We have that here.
Yeah.
Can we implement that so that you can only buy at X amount regardless?
Do you want to here?
Well, do we need, to?
Yeah, that's the question.
but should we do it even if we don't need?
No. My opinion, no.
Okay.
I mean, there should be options.
I
now.
agree with
And
that. I agree
education.
with that.
Well, generally, I
I
think
mean,
that,
I'm conservative to.
Yeah.
I think the
However.
first step for anything like this would be using a carrot, not a stick, right?
Right.
What can we incentivize people to do rather than
Yeah.
force them to do and
Yeah.
make it a good idea for them to do? So, I
And
mean,
let it evolve on its own.
there you go. I mean, once, I mean, you gotta shift whole thinking, right? I mean, the whole thinking right now is, yeah, a hobby is to have a single species lawn, and that's either that or rock. And then there's a whole gamut of things that you can have rather than that. So you can't have any turf go in. It doesn't matter what species it is, because you can't incentivize one species or another. We can't oversee that.
Well,
you
and the
know.
reality of it's down here. Most people don't have lawns because most people will not pay the water to water a lawn. Drive around to
Well,
all these areas.
We also have a lot of
There
people
aren't
that
any
are,
lawns because people will not pay the money. And if your landlord pays the money.
we also
then-
have a lot of ditch water. So
Yeah.
it's like, well, you know,
Yeah.
we're not gonna go around and say, do you have ditch? Do you have,
Right,
you know,
exactly.
city water?
Yeah, so, yeah.
We're not going to do that.
Or if you're on
But
a
what you can
well,
do is you can say, like Colorado Springs is, me and Dad sat in on a presentation where they're offering, and I'm not saying this is what we should do, but they're offering up to $10,000 for somebody to go off of turf onto at least a living garden. Even xeriscape, but they're not forcing xeriscape because it tends to be pretty ugly, but like a low water living garden. So, you know, because what they found is they don't even have to really go and monitor after the situation, because once somebody changes over, they're not going to put turf back in. Buying turf is generally very expensive.
Right.
And so that one-time thing, they're seeing water savings. I don't remember the exact figures, but it was cheaper than buying water outright. So you're doing demand management rather than resource management.
and that's
you
the
know.
kind of stuff that I think.
Yeah,
that's
so
perfect.
spending that
That's what
$10,000
we should be doing.
per person was cheaper than buying water outright. And now that's a limited bucket that you can go to, but you know, that's low hanging fruit.
Yeah, but I think the legislature proposed that the state would kick in some money for that type of program.
There are grants out there right now.
Do you know where they are in the drafting of that legislation?
No, like I said, this was just a discussion that Ag Committee
And they're
had.
in those committee talks
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, so they're a long way from proposing anything. Well, we won't see till February anyway, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, one of the things that we're supposed to look at as a committee is conservation. And this is certainly one way that you can conserve is by, you know, some of the programs we've been talking about. Are there other things that we should look at in terms of conservation that we can, you know, as I see our role with city council, what we're doing is we're kind of doing some of the groundwork for council to point them and advise them of issues or actions that opportunities that right, exactly, that they may have to deal with some of these issues. But is there, so we don't have, there's no legislation right now. It's just being talked about, considering how the legislature has been functioning the last couple of years, we're likely to see something. I would say this is probably something the legislature would be happy to pass, you know, to do to us.
Well, but as Dwayne knows, these forced mandates, they don't bring any money to it.
Right,
You'll do this, but you gotta pay for it.
right.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
And that gets irritating real fast.
I think what'll happen just from what happened last year with this same bill is it'll happen in the front range, the big cities.
Mhm.
And then next year is when outlier, we'll have to worry about it. Possible.
I think that wherever they are with the legislature, I think that there is opportunity for us to look and see what, at least maybe survey what other communities are doing. Maybe we get a list of here are things just for ourselves, get a list of here are things, and then have a discussion about the list and see if we want to make a recommendation to council about things that council could consider.
Yeah, one of the things that's realistic for this council, I've talked to Travis about it, is a grant from CWCB that would cover these, costs that Travis was talking about, $10,000. Change your lawn over to
Yeah.
Zeroscape or something.
Uh-huh.
And that's realistic that this council could go after, is that type of grant from CWCB.
Sure.
Because it's there, the pot of money is sitting there, they're just waiting for applications.
So what specific things do we need to do to find out about that? That's a current grant.
CWC, it's going through its second round right now. CWCB though, generally for any of its grants, and I don't know if this one applies to it, you have to have a water efficiency plan, which we don't have.
Oh,
But I did roll it into our water master plan,
mhm.
and that's going to be taken care of. So
So what
we
about
might have
like
to
a-
wait for that to
just
happen.
To see the city do like a demonstration garden, like, you know, they did the Xeriscape garden for the. Gosh, which one? Was it John Griffin or, but he's got the bridge. The little Xeriscape garden that's down on Sells Avenue.
Oh, so are you thinking maybe it's at the rec district that did that?
Is that rec district or is that city?
Yeah, it's rec district.
Is it rec district? But like the city parks, like if they could, like take a few parks or areas of it and then do some different grasses in there. Do some warm season like Bermuda, do some fescue, do some playing around. Usually they just use a regular blend, which most people do, but have some actual demonstrations, maybe some even a grant that they would put forward to where people could see it, feel it, touch it, and go, hey, what's wrong with this one? You know, it's not Jarek looking necessarily, but lower water. And just change out some areas, you know, like golf courses and stuff, or changing their grasses a lot, you know, or we could buy Shadow Hills.
Yeah.
Do that.
That's it.
Demonstration
Good
garden.
plot, good plot.
The-
Well, it could be donated.
There are
It's a
already
nonprofit, the Church of the Holy Fields. You know,
So what do we need to do to learn about what the requirements for the grant?
It spells it out on the website.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think like Travis said.
I've
yeah,
looked at it
like a-
before, but we have not had time to delve into it very far.
Was that something that the city would apply
Uh,
for?
I think it
We
has to
can't.
be, I think it has to be.
Yeah,
if I
Can't do
remember
it.
right.
We could help them do it.
I think it has to be a government agency.
Yeah, we certainly could do it.
But it's a. then it can be a fast-
Watershed restoration. Local governments. District. So it is available. Who is available?
Wait, before we go down there,
Well, that's
would
the
you go back
garden
up
I
to
was
the
talking
top? And don't just skip over the entities entitled, or who can apply.
District.
Local governments. Municipally owned water provider, so we double qualify there as a municipality and a water provider. Metropolitan, just especially water districts
It's really individuals and HOAs are really
and tribes.
what they're saying. Cannot.
Right.
Individuals in nature.
It's gotta be everybody.
I could reach out to Jenna Batson and get some more information on it for sure.
Because that is an interesting idea too, would be like some kind of a ample garden that's done by, maybe not the city, but maybe, I mean, maybe somebody coming in to want to, you know, house development or like the Abbey or something like that. You know, hey, you know, do some demonstrations of what kind of,
Maybe the master gardeners.
yeah, the master gardeners and maybe they had some, you know, a space where they would do it, you know, the city
Yeah,
donated
FFA.
space.
I wonder if they have this.
What's that?
FFA.
Your
No,
phone
like
says
that.
it, but the-
Master Gardener, though, is talking with Jesse and all that, trying to get my people trained.
Yeah,
Not to Master Gardeners, but the Colorado Conservation.
yeah, the
Is this,
state.
is this related to stormwater?
Cause that'd be a good,
Runoff.
maybe avenue. Cause that's
No,
state
more
funded.
like, just conservation.
Well, I'll leave this tab open and
So I'll talk with Jesse on that, you know,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Master Gardener.
Yeah.
That could be a good one there, so.
Surface water
So
that's running away.
CSU tried to get, well, there was trying to be a line swap with that place up on Fields and Fourth Street. Anyway, the lady didn't want it to be well, she wanted to go into conservation trust or something like that. CSU was trying to make a deal with her to get it. And then they were gonna put a test spot in there.
yeah, Blake was talking about this.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that kind of fell through because she decided to go, somebody else has it now, it's protected still, but I think CSU would be the way to tackle that and get them to, they just need the ground to do it.
Sure.
And they would
Yeah,
come
and
do
that's
it in a heartbeat.
CSU is Master Gardener, I mean,
It
that's a
is.
good
All the same
correlation
thing.
there, and I'll
Yeah.
talk to Jesse, who's on the board of the local Master Gardener program, see if that's something we can go. I'd love to see, even myself, you know, I'm like, man, I've got property, but I don't wanna
Yeah,
do that, but
But
I
I
mean,
think
there's
if you
other
take,
areas.
there's a spot out by Council of Governments that the county owns.
Oh, yeah.
It's good ground, it's right above Colin Orchards. But there's nothing there, I mean, that would be a good spot, in fact, we talked to CSU when you were still on board, right? We talked to CSU about coming in there and putting some plots in there,
How big does it need to be?
not huge.
Half an acre,
No,
quarter
it didn't have to
acre,
be that big.
Yeah, I mean, a good
100 by
test
100 or something?
would be
Right.
per species, let's say if we did 4 species, I'd like to see 1,000 square foot or more
Yeah,
per
probably.
species.
And I think we could do that, the only thing beside there's that little retention pond that there's between, anyway. I mean, there are locations for that where you can have it in Canyon City, because you're talking about Canyon City, 2 people, you wouldn't want them to have to drive Pathfinder Park, totally different soil, everything down there. But it would be a good compromise, but I think CSU would jump on board, they looked at that 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually a prime spot that we might, that is vacant right now, and it's behind the police department. Between them and Sol Vista, there's a big swatch there that's city-owned property. And the reason I know
where the
about it
homeless
is because
people live.
the weeds tend to get
Yeah.
out of hand there really
Well,
easy.
that's really.
But that would be a really great place, it seems to me, because it's long. It might only be 20 or 25 feet wide or something like that, but it's plenty long enough that you
So
could
that'd make
do.
a good sectional for different types, you
The
know.
police department does have a watered lawn, so water might be available there. They got a shop building right out there on the fence line. That there could be water available in that shop, I don't know for sure or not, but
And that's city owned.
that's city owned.
And the other one by Colin Orchard, you're saying that's a county?
It's right behind the car, Council of Governments, county owns it. The reason the county owns it is because there's a detention pond on there, I'm guessing is why the county owns it.
Yeah, behind COG and to the west of Moses. Kind of a little triangle. Something like that.
So that's the police department parcel right there. There's
Yeah.
actually a huge area.
You're talking back here.
Yeah,
Who owns that field next to it? Is that Colin?
That's gotta be Colin. Yeah, Mackenzie, I think
And
it's
then
his.
that's the theater. and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
crowd was there, so we trapped cats there.
Is ideally, I mean, optimally, it would be someplace where somebody could just pull up and look at it, you know?
Yeah, right.
Like what would be great is if you could do the
There.
front of somebody's.
That's what you're talking about,
existing
Dwayne.
Place, you know? So they wouldn't have to, you know, like you go to
It's not very big.
Mhm.
somebody
Big
and
enough, though.
have them, you know, say, we're gonna redo your landscape.
Well, even the city, like a city park, that's where I think a city, if it was, wanna do city and
Yeah,
then
but you're not gonna
dedicate
get to-
recs.
Yeah,
Of course, that's.
you're
my
not gonna get the
cousin, so
city
he'll be
to
like,
tear up any of their turf.
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
like,
37
but somewhere where that, some
Yeah.
people could see
Three-quarters
it,
of
that's
Yeah.
kind of a public area,
Yeah.
and people wouldn't be tramping
Yeah,
around.
no, yeah.
Then it's a secret, it's like, well, let's go check it out.
What was the one right next to that to the east?
to the east, that's
subdivision, yeah, Chris, so, but yeah, that, so it's just sitting there, that nothing will ever happen.
What about on the front? What about that front spot? That empty, big empty spot that right there, what's that?
Fire department.
Fire department.
Part of it, yeah.
That's,
It's commercial property.
that's,
That's
in the
expensive property.
process of something happening.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
That's best I could do.
Yeah.
What does the police department look like altogether as far as? They do have some lawn and stuff, right?
No, the police department has a whole bunch of xeriscaping in the front of the
Oh,
police
they-
department.
Well, right there at the, right there on the
That's
plaza,
lawn, right?
but that's all lawn there and that's all lawn along the,
So it's already got a water system to
and
it.
it's there's a couple of lawn spots inside the fence you can see there in the back.
And that's all fenced off.
But you could go there if you.
Now they're in town lot, they keep stolen bicycles
Yeah, so
there.
they wouldn't want people back there.
Yeah,
There's no public access.
But that's next to.
Mm-mm.
I'm looking at
so
their
that
lawn
for the
area.
fence there, but the whole lot is not, you know, cut
Yeah,
there.
that would be
I remember looking at some pictures and suggesting some plants for them, but I didn't remember having lawn. But there you have a water system, you could always separate it, because they have sidewalks, and just think, okay, we're gonna make this one a
What's your
festival.
water taps?
Make this one and.
I'm sorry?
What do you have marked there?
Oh, yeah, the, Greens water taps,
In Denver to do a lot of that stuff.
hydrants, sploss. Yeah, sorry, no, it gets clustered.
So you
Yeah,
haven't heard anything new on source water, have you, Trav?
as far as,
As far as like, Denver still trying to take San Luis Valley water?
I have not heard anything more about that. No,
Last I heard, they blocked that.
yeah, I think
It
San Luis
wasn't Denver, it
Valley,
was Douglas County there.
they got a nice little consortium of, they all banded together basically and
Yeah.
blocked it. Is,
Yeah.
but I don't think it was officially blocked though. I think it was looking that way, but I
No,
don't know that it was.
So they were taking water from
Yeah.
San Luis.
I thought it was Douglas
Yeah,
County and
more
I thought,
buying
and
rights,
that's
and
what
the governor came out
They get
against,
7 inches of moisture
Governor
in San
came
Luis
out
Valley
against
here, of course, all their
Yeah.
One of
water's
the commissioners were just fighting. about
Yeah, they got
it.
some irrigation out there.
But they, yeah, everything, potato farms out there.
Yeah.
I got shut down.
So they're buying the irrigation water.
yeah, they're trying to.
And they were trying to pass legislation to keep that from happening ever again anywhere.
Yes,
Trying to-
or making it harder. So if you want to buy and dry, you really have to do a lot of land remediation.
That would be great. So another issue that's is in the rumor mill, I think it's actually more than rumor, is about the fact that the Abbey development is being the big stumbling block now is the stormwater retention pond, that big one that's in the back was not designed correctly for a 500-year flood, and so now the developers are.
It was designed for 100 flood, I
Right,
remember.
and it's supposed to be a 5. This is what I just heard from some realtors and stuff that so now, and actually it was from somebody else who actually owns property on the Abbey development, that land. And so they said that's what they heard was a big stumbling block now. So that's probably gonna become up as an issue for city council. If I were the developers, they're probably gonna be all
So-
up in arms with that.
The difference between a 100-year floodplain and a 500-year floodplain affects insurance and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And maybe if you're, so do they set the floodplains at 100 years or 500 years?
I want to say FEMA does 100.
FEMA does 100.
Yeah, I think it's like
Yeah.
20, 50 and 100 or something like that.
Yeah.
But then
Right.
that 500-year flood just came up this last couple of years in a couple of different areas in Colorado. It was a 500-year flood that
Yeah.
occurred. Anyway, I just would think that that's gonna be an issue that's gonna be coming in front
So
of
they're
us.
just saying
About the
making the retention
stormwater.
water be bigger and.
I don't
using
know,
some of
they
that
said it has to
development.
be totally redesigned is what I was heard.
Just
Hmm.
to ask the question, we talked about the city's grass here, the police's grass. How about the prisons in this area? Their grass.
Well, that.
Guess who has the most ditch rights of anybody
Water
in the
rights.
area?
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask because
Yeah.
you see a lot of green
Well, you can
across the
see
loves. on that
Grandview.
grand
It may not
entrance
have
over
the
there, and
right
I go,
layer.
Wow.
Yeah,
Look
they
at all
own,
that
they own,
grass.
they own a lot of ditch rights.
Oh, okay.
So,
You know, to each his own, however, I
Yeah.
on the
Well,
ask.
but nonetheless, if Canyon City, they're not in Canyon City.
On the ask.
Yeah, they're state, they're.
But the
they're like
territorial, the
county,
territorial
right?
is,
Yeah.
the
This is the
territorial,
only one that's in the city.
yeah. And they have a nice lake right there.
Well, they have a lot of.
Do they?
Lake
water there,
territorial,
too.
yeah, it's a regular basis. It's a-
Yeah, I see water out there, you're like, why
Oh,
do you water your
irrigation.
lakes?
Yeah,
They're
it's-
Aeration.
yeah.
Is there any more conversation about reservoir here? We abandon that thought?
That's one, I believe that is still being investigated, that it's not off the table, that
Which one, I'm sorry?
we're not.
Reservation.
Storage.
Storage.
Yeah, water.
Yeah, we have a few options that we're talking to some people about and nothing that we can talk about publicly.
So then the other big issue that's being talked about publicly right now is the ponds and elimination thereof.
Which one?
All the ponds in the area.
Oh,
All the ponds in Colorado.
All the ponds,
Oh, and like-
but in this area alone, I heard there was 500 that have been cited and a bunch of them have already been eliminated. This
Well,
was on,
So
was
those
on
are
the
ponds that don't
agricultural
have
news.
any water,
there, I mean,
like the evaporation, augmentation.
right.
You can have
augmentation,
ponds, you just have
yeah,
to augment them.
Right.
Yeah.
And then.
No, that's not all true.
You can have some ponds into
Yeah,
whatever.
that's not all true. There was 20,000 ponds in Fremont County from the satellite view. And they're still working on the rules. But the only ponds that can be saved, unless they have senior water rights,
And fire mitigation.
are
For-
ones that are good for fire mitigation, but they have to meet certain requirements. They can't be bigger than 6 acre surface feet. They can be as deep as they want to. They have to have a dry hydrant. They have to be able to get to them either by land or by sky.
A dry hydrant,
Yeah,
that's a dry hydrant.
dry hydrants to,
Yeah, it seems that oxymoron.
yeah, that's the dry hydrant. It's to aerate it, fill the tank to be able to fill the trucks and stuff.
Oh,
So you have a wet barrel and a dry barrel. Dry barrel just means that it drains out after you're done using it.
oh, gotcha.
Yeah, there's drain
Oh, the
plugs at
dry
the bottom.
hydrant. I
So
got
those
it.
rules are almost completed. And the water commissioner has probably talked to almost everyone that has one of those ponds. They're even including the ones up on BLM that were put in there for water retention to keep floods from coming in. And some people went ahead and breached theirs. They haven't got breach orders yet, but some of the people did because they didn't want to pursue the augmentation or anything like
So,
that,
yeah.
because it's expensive. They can jump on with Upper Ark, who has an augmentation plan, but it's still really expensive.
Mhm.
And right now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ponds that I have information for because we have to submit them. The county commissioners have to submit them to the state, and then the state water engineers who decides whether those stay or not, but they've got to meet several criterias. Three of them are up on the west end. One of them is what's her name? Doctor over here by
Carlson?
Carlson's, thank you.
Wow,
One of them is Carlson's
Wow,
pond.
one of them's across the lake,
Yeah.
Sells Lake.
Yep, but they have to be constructed before 1971. They have to be, like I said, meet all these certain.
There, that
criteria.
was.
We only, yes,
Yeah.
it's been there since the
1800s,
1800s.
yeah.
We only get 30 acre surface feet per county,
Wow.
so.
Yeah, so then this was brought up in a conversation with a long-standing person in this community who was very vocal about it. So I said, I'd look into that.
Yeah, so I talked to the water commissioner just last week, and the rules aren't made yet completely. They're
Okay.
not solidified yet. So once those are made, then they'll start issuing breach orders.
Okay, all right.
And once they issue a breach order, we have 15 days, I think, to submit a pond, which I have all the information for these ponds, just can't submit them yet because they don't have that.
All right.
Those rules
Okay.
written, right?
Yeah.
So,
They're flying the plane while they're building it here.
Right.
Well, that comes into the stormwater thing, if they're breaching all these ponds that are for retention, to kind of slow the water flow. It's like, then we have no protection, against a 100-year flood or 500-year flood. I mean,
Especially those big ones up on BLM that are above. Yeah, because that'll affect even down here.
You can have them, but they have to be drained in, what?
72 hours
72
if
hours.
you have the right permission. You still have to have storage rights and water rights. Other than that, you can't stop it.
but you think BLM, that's the man themselves,
They're not part of the compact. Colorado has the precedence of that.
So even state has.
So where that came about too, Beth, is when they got sued by Kansas last time, they lost.
right.
And it's because not all the water's getting Kansas where they claimed it wasn't, and so they don't wanna lose any, and they think by reaching these ponds that it would
Make them
free up
look
enough
better.
water that they might get it
They're
there.
kind of taking a posture that it's not any one big user, but it's death by 1,000
Oh.
cuts.
Okay,
I think their biggest problem is if they go through and clean out all the tamarinds all the way down, they would triple their water quantity.
right, that's true, yes, that's true. Tamarisk and the Russian olive, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, they would.
Is there a solution to that, though?
Not really.
To get off topic a little more?
Not-
No, they released the bugs for the tamarack.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they're pretty successful down there at Florence, that area
That
that you
little
cleaned out,
Florence River
that,
Park, yeah.
that worked out, and the and then
That was
at
high
Pathfinder,
grass.
you guys have cleaned all that out. That looks-
Russian olives.
Yeah, the Russian olive and the tamarisk, yeah.
But you have to keep after it.
if you
Right.
have Jackson, they come back, but they are releasing those beetles in several places and it's taking care of, but the river is just full of tamarind all the way down. And then they're just a plague, they just keep growing.
Well,
They're not
From Pueblo,
native,
work out
right?
Nordway.
Yeah, and all of those
I go
rivers,
all
it's
the way
all
down the
tamarind.
river.
Goes all the way down to Lake
I go
Lake
all
Powell,
the-
Lake Powell has tamarisk in
I was
every
hoping Blake
single.
was here to tell me what that big black 3-inch pipe is going down 50 there out by the airport, but maybe you know what that is, John? He would know. I understand there's supposed to be some sort of a water supply line that goes out it's that way.
You know, Florence serves all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to service that.
wants water.
But
They have a tank up.
I was told it's significant in size.
Florence
as
gets their
well.
water
This
from
doesn't
Little
look like
Creek,
it's.
is
I'm not sure.
I'm like, that's crazy. Maybe Middle Creek didn't have.
I think they have multiple sources.
Yeah.
They do
Yeah.
get some from there, yeah. They just restored one of those places
This
on
goes
the
back
back
to-
last year.
This was before Carter.
So is there a role the city can play in the ponds? This is really just kind of a discussion. There's not really, there's the, if anything, we'll just be, if the city had ponds, what about our duck pond? Does that count?
Yes,
I don't
It
know,
drains in
it
and
drains
out.
out in and out.
So it goes, it fills in and drains out. So
but
it's
I don't
not-
know, what kind of water rights do you have for that?
That's
Parks,
ditch water.
I have nothing to do with that.
No.
It's,
I
uh,
Yeah,
haven't
and I
been-
Just
don't want
plead the
anything to do with that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a good question though, John.
Yeah,
It
they're
goes in and
on-
out. It
I think
goes
they're
in
on
and
South
out. I think
Canyon,
they
but I don't
say-
think they use raw water rights for it.
It doesn't matter if
I
it
don't
goes in
know.
and out or not, I don't know what kind of
Right.
water rights they have for it,
Yeah.
because
The,
they're maintaining it.
well,
That's- you said
there's
the South
always,
Canyon water rights?
But I don't think they're using the South Canyon. You can't use it for a pond, so I don't believe, I know that that park has South Canyon rights attached to it.
it doesn't matter if you don't add water to it, that it empties. It matters, what matters is the water surface area that's maintained throughout the year. And so that's the issue. That's the water rights issue. And that's why you have to augment if you've got a pond because of evaporation.
And I would assume the city has that in place with that, but I don't really know.
Yeah, because the draining 72-hour thing, I mean, it would recirculate, but it doesn't, and they can drain, can they drain?
It doesn't drain in 72 hours.
I mean, it would recirculate or flow out.
Well,
I mean,
that's Rex's problem.
They
they're-
have a
Don't tell
little
my setting.
rock ledge there, so.
Nothing to do with
you
that.
can Access it to draw from it.
You could from the west side.
Okay,
But the east side.
So-
Yeah, we brought that up.
Traffic go through this.
Are
I
we
didn't
ready
say-
for
I
water
didn't
rate?
even-
Yeah, my-
well, hang on, maybe
Yeah.
just a minute. Just give me
Okay.
one more minute here. So I think we've got an action item there. I will call Rex.
You want to
And
be
ask-
responsible for having the pond drain?
Well, what
If
the,
the water commissioner knows it's there and you don't have augmentation, you've been contacted. I guarantee it.
we, that is something that's in our purview to find out about.
Okay,
And we'll just find out. I mean, we'll just get some,
Sure, compliance.
and I'll hopefully be able to report back next time what I find out. Okay. So water rate increase, let's move on here. What, you got something on that?
Sure.
Mhm. You need to draw on the board?
No, Technology is a wonderful thing most times.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't get to the drawing board. I'm hoping to be a little bit past that. We made the decision this year to try to tie the water rate increase directly to inflation. So Denver CPI is 4.9 right now. So we rounded up to a nice healthy 5. So we're going to go for a 5% water rate increase. That's the number that we have in our heads right now anyways. Again, just tying it to inflation. We did a water rate study in 2017, which the results of that water rate study dictated that we should raise water rates by 9% for 5 years. As we talked about before, we did it 3 years. The 2 years before that, we did, I think, 3% raises, I want to say. Yeah, so we didn't do the 9% as the study suggested 2 of those years, but 3 of the years we did. So we're about 12% behind anyhow. So trying to just keep up this year. That's based on a whole lot of math. So what they do is they do like a cost per service for customer class and how much money you're taking in versus what it should cost to implement your system.
And
Okay.
that what the big part of that I remember from this study, and maybe that's something that we should send to the water committee members, is that study, because that is available probably on the website. I'll check on that. That's a 2018.
What does it take into account? Growth too, or no?
But it's mainly operations and maintenance and capital replacement. That's where we're behind. We can, if we didn't have to do any capital replacement, we're pretty close to breaking even with water, is what I remember.
With 0 capital projects, yes.
With 0 capital projects. So but when you throw capital in there,
That's cheap.
we're yeah.
Because you're saying in 10 years, we're probably gonna need to replace the water treatment plant or redo, or no, is that something I heard wrong?
Yeah, we're not going to need to replace it.
So we're good.
Treatment plan as a whole, there's aspects of it. There's
There's
sections of
always-
it.
For instance, we've got a high head pumping station. We had to replace that. We've had to replace the electrical
Yeah.
associated with that. Electrical was put in the 70s. So that gives you an idea of how long some of that stuff can last,
Mhm.
with careful.
Shouldn't last that long, but
Shouldn't last
yeah,
that long.
with tender loving care.
Duct tape and film.
Yeah. Okay, so
Lead pipes down Main Street not too long ago.
Yeah, well, you probably still do on the private
We
side, not on
may.
our side.
We may have, and that.
So where was all that going with the shed?
Well, let's keep on one thing at a time.
Sure.
If I could be so bold.
Yeah.
You can do.
That's not the one I wanted. That was the 9%. Give me a second. So what I do when we're talking about water rates. Is I come up with a projection model. So these are all the different customer classes. Oh man, that's what I forgot to do. I just forgot to do that. All right, so what we do is we have our current billing, current rate structure. You have a meter charge. That's your block charge that you get for up to 1,000 gallons of consumption. And then you have your consumptive rate. So currently, if you have a 3/4 and that's outside resident, we'll start inside. We had the 5. Okay. So inside city limits for residential, you have your meter charge. You have 3 different rates that you have, and it's designed to be more expensive the more water you use. It forces some water, conservation right there with our rate structure. So we have current and then proposed. So that would be the difference with 5%. Okay. So when you look down here, you have your winter average usage, fall average, spring, and then summer average. So that's what we see, 11,000 gallons per quarter of consumptive use per household on average. So that's that gives you an idea of what it's going to switch to. When we go to our next one, water rate comparison, it kind of simplifies it a little bit and gives you a little more. That's awesome. I probably already have it open. Nope, that's going to be a little bit further on. Bear with me. There we go. All right, so water rates, residential inside, meter fee. This is what we're just talking about. That's what your actual rates would change to. Monthly bill for 10,000 gallons, 45 to 47. for a monthly increase of $227, annual increase of $27.21. So that's a 5% increase average across residential.
So a quick question on water consumption. You guys apparently have the ability to monitor if you notice an unusual amount of water being used.
It depends on what water meter you have. So we're in the
Exactly.
process of upgrading our meters.
Okay,
And we have a few different styles out there. We have old styles that we have a snapshot once a month of
Okay.
consumptive use, and we have our newer style that we have an hourly.
okay.
Yeah.
And that, and that's,
And then-
that's remote.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
all
it's
remote.
and you
radio read.
do, I have been called a couple different times because of unusual water use, but it was like after the fact. And so
Well,
my
we can't
$700
predict.
dollar bill that
Yeah.
month and my $700 sanitation bill, it was too late for that. But, and it was a weird situation. But anyway, is there any way to get on some kind of a program where you like could get a better, like if something, this was a case where, you know, it was actually a toilet down in a building we weren't using, and the flap had been left wide open, and so for a whole month, it was wide open on a toilet. And that I didn't get a call until I had fixed it, and then, I don't know, something happened anyway, I got a call, hey, did you know that? Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was just wondering if there was.
Again, it depends on what meter you have. So if
Okay.
you have one of those monthly snapshot meters, we won't know until we do the read.
Well,
And then we would tell you if,
Okay,
so I've got a question. My question is it, what are the considerations if we wanted to let citizens be able to read their own meter whenever they want it?
we don't want people getting into their meter
No.
pit.
No,
yeah, because you can only do
but
it.
you do it remotely.
Right, but we don't want people to give access to our network either.
Well,
That's a Neptune software that we use to read all those.
so, but as I understand it, what we've got is a unit on the water meter that transmits a signal
Mhm,
that can be read.
mhm.
That doesn't mean that we have to let citizens access the system the city uses to read. What I'm asking is there a way for citizens to read their own meters?
I don't know. I don't believe so. I think Neptune software, you have to have a license for it, but I don't know the answer to that.
What if I access my account and the account is live or to date?
Well, at any point, a citizen can call and ask, and if they have a newer style meter, we will give them a printout of their water usage for whatever time period they want.
But yeah, so.
But
Like your
with
bank
the,
account, you can
but-
check it.
but with the new smart meters, electric meters, power usage on houses, you can actually capture that signal yourself and read your power usage real time.
Yeah, I don't know whether Neptune allows that or not.
Like a Wi-Fi type signal?
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Well, that wouldn't, I just,
Would have to be-
I was just curious, because since I was notified that, you know, how that notification actually occurred.
So, to me, there's a bigger issue there. And that's the ability of consumers to have information that should be just like, if the meter was on the wall, the outside wall of the house, our water usage meter, people could go read their meter whenever they wanted to see whatever
Yeah.
to see what.
Well, it's also catching up with that technology, and for smaller municipalities like us, we're not quite caught up with that. I mean, we
Understand,
still
and-
have the problems with credit card payments. I mean, we have a lot of catching up to do.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but
So
nonetheless,
someday we'll, you know, we can maybe get all that.
Yeah.
So
so one of my favorite jokes is the group of, there's a group of people in suits sitting around a boardroom table, and there's somebody up in front talking. And one of the guys leans over to the guy next to him and says, "Did he just say we're going to jail someday or Sunday?" And but that's my point here, is that I think it's worthwhile to ask the question, what would it take for citizens to be able to read their meters at will? You know, that happens, everybody in Canyon, I think, has a smart power meter. So that can happen right now on the power side. Now, you know, the questions of cost and availability and all kinds of things come into that, but I think it's worthwhile asking the question. What,
I will ask the question.
And that is what you're working towards, right? I mean.
Well,
that's
yeah, I
what
mean,
a
with-
lot of this stuff
So
is.
to back up a little bit, with the newer style meters, when it is read hourly, I mean, there's alarm set points that we have. So at any time our water clerk comes in and, you know, she boots up her software and there's zero usage and there's over typical usage.
Mhm.
And if it's zero usage or over typical, we'll send a meter reader out there to check the meter.
yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, and
That's-
we'll make
that's-
contact with the homeowner if they're home and say, you know, if it's over usage, are you guys aware of this? Are you doing anything? If it's zero usage, are they gone? Okay, great. You know, or check the meter to make sure it's still live.
Right.
So there are checks that we do
And that's
with the
good.
newer style meters, and it's gonna take a while to get everybody on those. Took a while to get everybody on radio reads, you know, I remember the days when we used to,
Obsolete.
yeah, I mean, it really
Yeah,
is.
that's
It's,
exactly it. You're like, you
Yeah.
never catch up.
I mean, I had the same thing
Takes a lot
happen
of
years
money.
ago in Denver, and then what, they never even informed me that I had.
I think
100,000
one meter
gallons because
nowadays
the toilet
is
was open.
250 or $300 for a meter. So
Yeah.
that gives you an idea to upgrade 8,000 accounts is no
200,000
small.
gallons in a month before
Do what
before
you
we
have,
realized the
8,000
toilet was leaking.
8,800 roughly.
Doesn't even
Question,
have to be
Carlos,
wireless.
do you have the, I was looking at your file system there, it looks like you're pretty well organized. Do you have the 2018 water rate study? at hand?
Yes.
Well, okay, so.
So
would
to-
you please send that out?
To back up a little bit, the city ran out of money. And so it's not like a binder. It's basically a series of memos that was giving to the city council
Yes,
is our,
right.
is what we have as far as deliverables. So I will,
That's fine.
yeah, so it's gonna look like this. So that was the recommended, I'm at the top of this one, yeah, so recommended water utility revenue funding by year. This is where it was saying 9% for 5 years,
Yeah,
and it gives, you know, information there. So it's, like I say, it was a series of city council presentation. So that's what it's going to look like, but yes, it
So-
has all the stuff in there,
as
and it
far
was a
as the-
stormwater and water.
And so if someone,
maybe I'm thinking stormwater, because there was one study that we had that was just tables and tables. and that's not stormwater.
Tables and tables are in here.
There's a binder too. Oh,
Yeah, so there is a lot of information in here. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
But yes, I can.
so and as far as this current water increase, like if someone was to ask me about it, you know, how my water rates went up, how come they went up? I would tell them, first of all, they were going up 9% a year, and now we only went up 5% a year. And so look at that, isn't that wonderful?
Why didn't you go
And
up
then-
9%?
And then,
Be-
and then it's for capital, it's to run the water department and then also to put money aside for capital improvements.
The
in future,
5% is just to
Yes.
keep up with the
to
cost of doing
keep up with the
business.
cost of running. the
It's
water.
not getting any more money in. It's just the
Right.
cost of doing business.
Cost
Yeah,
of
I'm sorry. What was your
just-
question, Gwen?
Council will,
Yeah.
hang on that
Okay.
question. Council will actually make the decision about what the final rate is.
Right,
Right.
Council has to consider the capital requirements.
Right.
And so it's not likely to be 5%.
right, so you might do more, okay, right, so that's good. to know.
It could be any number of things.
Right.
Yeah, that would be what we're looking for from this group is suggestions, right? So I'll give you what this is. You can go 9%, you can go 0. I would strongly suggest not going 0, however attempting it may be.
Is there
But
any projections for next year? I mean, is it gonna go up another 5%, another
Yeah,
9%?
this study covered how many?
to 2022. So what we're gonna get next year is for our water master plan that we're doing right now. The end date for that will be October of 23. So we'll have information to and they'll do a brand new rate study.
So, and then we're gonna do a brand new rate study. I thought this rate study was like almost a decade long, I think, or something. like
Yeah.
that. Covered like a decade of what you need to do to get back into the black, because it's been in the red is the issue.
So aren't you also with your capital, trying to coincide with your two-way projects of streets? With water,
Yep. So we'll get into that a little bit.
okay,
Let me keep going.
well, I'm getting ahead.
Yep, you are. You got, all right. So we were here, water rate. So that gives you an idea, you know, when somebody asks, well, what is that monthly increase? For the average, for a 5%, the monthly increase would be $2.27. So we're not talking a ton of money. There are a lot of people on fixed incomes, I understand. But that gives you an
If it's
idea
5%.
It's
if it's
5%.
5%. And yeah, that's not something we were deciding today.
See, then I'll say something like Travis did,
Yeah,
when
Mike,
we
I
were
don't
five,
think
the
it's
city
gonna be
council was
five.
the key. They did it.
All right, so what I did, and I don't have this on an Excel. Well, I have an older one. I have been off all week, so that's my excuse for not having a little bit more of this done. But what I have done in years past, so this was the 27 cost of service per class.
You're down here on your vacation?
Yes, sir.
Oh, my.
For you guys.
So you're on overtime.
Yeah,
And we didn't even bring you cookies.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
Mike, I here's some water.
I came
Yeah.
back early from vacation, Travis.
Well, yeah. If it was something other than water, I might take you up on it. But anyways, let's move on. All right, so what we did is that 2017 did give a cost of service per class, right? So I just ran it through the inflation calculator to get to 2021 numbers. Again, this is a little bit dated information, but to give you an idea. So this is what telling you what you probably should be spending to keep up your service at an acceptable rate. So we're at roughly $8 million. 2021 build was 6.6. So that gives you an idea where we're at. The other thing that I did was I took our O&M budgets. So we have water administration. What that is that's what we pay the general fund to get services such as HR, some legal, things of that nature, IT. That's all shared, but we have to pay for it. We're an enterprise fund. So that's what we pay for that. Utility billing, mostly wages, treatment, distribution, capital expenses, fund transfers, and debt service. That debt service right now is we had some COPs that were redone in 2017, and so we have debt from those. Okay, so that's just water fund. But yeah, it largely paid for water treatment upgrades in 2017, and I think we're done with those. I did make a note somewhere. We're done in 2032 with those. And so what I did was then we had thousands of gallons diverted. So we did 1.5 million, but that's in thousands of gallons, and got a cost per thousand budgeted. The reason I did that is because we bill per thousand. So it costs us $5.10 to just clean the water, deliver it. And it's a very simplistic way of doing it. That's not saying what you should be spending. That's what we are spending. And that is dollars budgeted, not dollars spent. Important distinction. So in our budget, it's not necessarily what we think of generally for a government budget, because there's a lot of things that we have to budget for that we may not spend. We may have a high electricity year that we have to budget for, but we may not spend that. We might have a lot more chemicals that we need to buy if we have dirtier water, but we may not spend that. So, but we do have to budget for it. We have to have the money available. So this is where it gets a little interesting in my mind. I'm a numbers nerd, so bear with me. This is our customer classes: res in, res out, non-res in, non-res out, non-res multis, group users. That's like Brookside or Orchard Park is our two consecutive systems, basically group users. Golf course city counts, total revenue, total metered. So this is what they actually paid. So you can see 510, you have some users that are paying much more, some paying much less. Now, generally, your outside residents do pay 50% more because the thinking behind that is not only are they responsible for keeping up the infrastructure inside to get the water to them, but they have their own infrastructure. Does that make sense? They have to pay for the whole spider web, basically. So generally, you do have about a 50% markup on outside versus inside. But that's one of the things we're going to be looking at our next rate study is this idea of fairness, right? Are customer classes paying what they should be paying? And it's going to get interesting. That's all I'll say about that.
If you're outside the city limits, then you don't have stormwater charges, which makes the bills significantly less.
It does,
the
but that's a
total
whole
amount.
different,
I
yeah.
know,
But yes, I do
yeah,
hear you.
yeah,
Some goes to the bottom line.
yeah.
Yeah. So we can go back to our total revenue of 6.6. These were our O&Ms. It actually was 2022 to go to 2023. So our O&M budget is pretty much what we take in revenue. So that goes back to the point. These are the numbers proving out that our revenue in just basically pays for our O&M.
Yeah.
No capital. All right, so I wanted to go just a little bit further down that capital, and we have our distribution projects. So this was a list I created to really illustrate what we're dealing with when we're talking about water infrastructure upgrades in the distribution system. These are all the streets that have cast iron. So any cast iron is considered junk. It is old cast iron. It falls apart. I have videos that I plan to show council meetings of, we put a clamp on it and they're videoing it and it blows up right next to the clamp. It's just, it's frustrating, and it's what we deem our highest priority to get out of the system. Okay. So we have College and Third, you know, and these are the linear feet that we have, and it's generally the sections, 4th and 14th, that sort of thing. What some of these don't take into account is if we're going higher than 8-inch. So this needs 12-inch pricing. This needs a ditch crossing. This needs a railroad crossing. That is not priced in. And those are not cheap things to do. So if we scroll to the end, that list is not short. We have almost 84,000 linear feet. These prices are of cast alone. So we're not talking transite main, undersized. We do have that list as well, AC. This is just cast. Okay, and we have 2 price points here. These are 2 benchmarks that I came up with over the past year. This first benchmark is to do the work in-house. So that would be materials only. I did not figure in wages because we're going to be paying those anyways, right? So, I mean, we can go cost of projects with wages, but what I want to do is really just what would it cost us to do these in-house projects per year? Okay. The second price is contracted out. So if we had a contractor come in and do them, that's what we would pay the contractor to do.
And what's the bottom line?
Bottom lines are it's about 11 million to 25 million. So I also threw in our 2024 request to do in-house water main work is $500,000. So
Probably not gonna make, probably not gonna do much.
yeah,
And you don't, you probably barely keep up with the
Oh, I
leaks.
know.
we barely keep up with leaks. So, you know, just to do all the work in-house at 500,000 per, you're talking 20 years just to get rid of the cast.
Right.
So I really wanted to illustrate that,
Mhm.
that this is the need for capital. And this is not even talking about the water treatment plant upgrades. This is just our distribution system that, and this is what all water purveyors across country are dealing with is this type of thing. So $6.5 million sounds like a lot until you start looking at what your capital projects are going to cost.
What's the benefit of bringing on an entirely new crew
Just for it.
just for that?
Well, the benefits are
to
you
lower
would be able to do a whole
equipment.
lot more work because, you know, when we're talking about doing this sort of work in-house, we can do it. We can do it well. We can't do it very efficiently. We're not set up for it. We have backhoes. We don't have excavators. We have flatbed dump trucks. We don't have tandems, you know, so you'd have to do some investment in getting the proper equipment in, plus another at least 3 personnel, you know, of varying expertise. You need equipment operators and you need frontline. But you know, you could do a lot more work.
And then from my
Rather
perspective,
than
then the city's in competition with private contractors.
Right,
Right.
so you
Right.
almost want to decide which of the projects
Which
are worth doing
The higher
in-house
rate
and which of the
liquids,
ones
the higher
are
rate
to,
liquids to do
are
it.
to do
Right.
contracting, yeah.
So that's what we did this next year. We
Right.
have some that we're doing in-house, some we're contracting out because quite honestly, we can't keep up with $500,000 worth of work. We cannot do it and work on water leaks and do normal upgrades such as meter pits when people need them redone, things of that nature. Yeah, so we kind of basically 50-50'd it, and that's what
Plus
a
you
lot.
I mean, you benefit the community when you hire.
Well,
a
and that's
local
just it. If we were to
contractor.
say that we were gonna not ever contract any water
Right,
main
then
work,
yeah.
you'd have Avalanche, you'd have
Yeah.
Lippis,
everybody
you'd
would be
have, you know,
upset,
people
and
would not be very
all the
happy with
jobs
that.
you-
Very
those
rightfully so.
people Pay for, you know, I mean, and those companies, those are good reputable companies too, that pay their employees well and do good work, so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
it's
just
worth-
wanted to kind of have this illustration of why
Mhm.
capital projects are important.
Right,
And
And so it's really, from my perspective, you know, having sat on council and seeing the results of these water studies and stuff like that, this is really a tough nut to crack because to get the water department into the black is years of 9% raises, not counting inflation. You know, oh my goodness, every year, 9% every year, not counting
that's a lot.
inflation.
How do you prioritize?
well, we let the rate study dictate it. That's what we're paying experts to do. They're gonna take in all this, capital projects. When do you want those to be done? You set a benchmark, okay, well, when do you want all the cast out? Do you want it in 5? You want it in 10? All those are very aggressive timelines, but you gotta do it.
Do you?
This is the non, I don't know, people don't want to deal with this kind of infrastructure because you can't see it. It's
You can't see
getting,
it,
it's getting your
right.
tires replaced for your truck. It's not pleasant to do, but you gotta do it.
What, do you have a date or an estimated installation date for those lengths of
Some of them are over 100 years old.
what? So, do you have, like Doris, has 1,350
Yeah.
linear feet of cast, right?
Mhm.
Was that all installed at the same time?
I don't know. We don't have records.
Okay, so.
We don't have
issue is
records going
don't
back
have
that far.
records.
Yeah.
The answer to my question is, do
Sure.
we have a date when installed?
So
And the answer is
we have
no.
general timelines that in the
Uh-huh.
50s it went out of style.
Yeah,
Then you started seeing more AC, and
Yeah.
then you started seeing more PVC, or ductile. So no, we don't have hard dates, but you have a general idea of when, again, it kind of went out of style.
does,
And there's also, once we dig it up, we'll know, because some of these cast iron bells are leaded joints,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
so
boy.
you got to get those out of the ground.
oh
So
geez, so, okay, all right,
Well, I think that you could go back to as far as a discussion with rate increases with the public, the fact that without water, no life exists. And so if you can't supply water to people, we should, as a community, as people, we should think, well, water should be very expensive. And we're already paying 37% more for our Black Hills Energy. So if our water increases go up, that's just sort of a fact of life. So we should be willing to pay more money for water than anything.
So the last thing I have, I just had seen that. Here we go.
Blood pressure on that.
All right. So what I did is I went ahead and did a comparison of surrounding communities. So you can see Kane City, and what you do is you do cost per 10,000, because everybody bills different. It's really difficult. You can't just say water rates are this and this. That doesn't
Yeah.
work that way, because everybody has different block charges they do and different water rates. So what you do is how much would it cost for a resident to pay for 10,000 gallons worth of water? And so that's what I did. So you go Kane City, we're actually the third lowest.
Yeah.
Pueblo is a little bit less, and then Salida is just a fuzz less than us. So I want to caution too, this is what people are charging. This is not what they should be charging. So you don't know what their finances are going to look like in 10 years.
Yeah, are you
Just
gonna-
as a cautionary tale
are you
here.
gonna present this to city council?
I can.
Just a suggestion when you do that you sort it by price.
Oh, sure. Yeah, can do. So you can see, the people that are already paying the piper, Fountain, Colorado Springs,
Yeah,
versus they're paying well over double, almost 250%.
Look at.
You got Park Center, you got Penrose, you got Pagosa.
Their rates, Salida's rates going, from what I've heard on Upper Ark Water, those guys that live up there, I think they're in the same boat, so. I think
Yeah.
You're gonna see their rates going up to do the same thing you're trying to do. on
Right.
infrastructure.
So it's just, yeah, it just really illustrates, I think Pueblo's doing the same thing. Pueblo West certainly is.
Is that relative to median income in any way? Is
No,
that
I don't
something that would help with
believe
the charts?
so. I don't believe so. I think,
Salida's gonna have to go way up.
I think in the end, it kind of,
Well, at least,
Well, that's what I mean, is it make it relative to the median income of the home?
not sure what water is,
Because Springs income is a lot different than Canyon income.
right? But the price of
and
putting
Pueblo
in
income.
pipe is the same.
Yeah,
The cost of doing business in
I
the water
understand-
business
I
is the
understand
same.
that, But look at what Springs is charging. But look at the revenue they get because of the amount of people that live there.
because they're paying for that water, they bought it through the ranch. They bought it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Springs can pay all day, in my opinion, however. Look at the
Well-
amount, look at the population, look at the numbers of population in these cities as well. With their prices, Pueblo's over 100,000, right? What are we at here, King?
Yeah, 15 to 18, something like that. I don't remember what
18,
18 is. That what it is?
Right.
18.
Look at the population and the median income relative to these numbers. Is there something there with that? And can we make our price increase just to that somehow? Just to put it out there,
Yeah,
being
yeah.
a numbers guy.
another.
You're a
I
numbers
mean,
guy, I'm a numbers guy. Let's
Yeah,
talk
no,
numbers.
I hear you. I just would again caution, because when you do a rate study, it's based on your hard numbers of what you need to pay for as far as your capital and then your O and M, right? And I think what you can do is, for low income and then go that way. So you have some sort of low income and I guess incentive wouldn't be the right word, allowance.
Well, see,
So
that-
if you have somebody that has,
unless you own your home, most people's water bills are paid by the person who owns the property.
sure,
And then
And so it has nothing to do with what their income is. And
For
it does
renters, right.
But yeah.
yeah,
So,
it's whoever's
but it-
paying,
yeah,
but there's plenty of
so-
people that own homes here that
Yeah.
are low income.
right, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
This, actually, this area,
variable.
yeah, absolutely.
Some that came to mind is demographics, age. Nobody in here is under 30. Maybe you
I'm
are.
only 20, come on.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
You're on the cusp. You're on the cusp. But I think
Tim and I are both
for the
39.
city of Canyon, as we have more people that are retired expire, do we have people coming into town or not? How's that gonna affect this bottom line in 10 years and your rate increase in 10 years? Where Springs has that growth with the younger population coming in, do we have that growth coming in here or not?
Hope we do.
Is something to consider long-term, to put it out there. Because I know I'm getting older and I think about that stuff is, who's filling the tank? Because I see the tank getting lower as we expire. And I know Pueblo was, a retirement community because of the lower cost. As people leave us, natural consequences, who's coming in? Something else to consider
Yeah,
in the big picture of things, right?
those are big.
So
picture
just
considerations.
something to think about.
Yeah.
Demographics is all numbers and it's part of that variable equation.
But it seems to me
Sorry.
like this,
Tangent.
all these numbers and stuff, that council probably ought to stick with the 9%.
Yeah. For,
Well,
That was my question.
for now.
Why'd you go at 4.9%?
You see,
That
you
was
said that
Denver CPI.
Denver CPI.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why. That's
Sorry.
where we got that.
Right.
Yeah, it was the starting point. Now,
I'd
anything
say
above that would be trying to shore up the water fund.
Yeah, I would agree with it. I mean, I think Tim is probably correct. You just keep on going with the 9% and then that way, you just sort of status quo. And 9 sounds way less than 10, we all know.
And now we go across the
Yeah.
19 years
4.9
evenly
better than 5.
over the whole.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of nice
the whole
about
thing,
the way
9%. We're not picking
my
a
per-
class or income.
my projection model is you can just plug in 9. And we can see right now that, your current billing for your summer average, we go from 49 to 53. So you're talking $4.40. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean-
that.
Yeah.
For an average person, that's not a huge, water's cheap. And I agree with Beth. That,
Like I said,
unfortunately,
I
it's a
pay
good and bad
40
thing.
water bills a month. And my biggest one on a regular basis, besides Pizza Madness, which we wash thousands of gallons. The biggest one is the stormwater charge on a property that uses no water at all. That's $150. So anyway, and I'm just saying that every time I look at all my bills, because I pay a bunch of people's electric bills and a bunch of people's gas bills too. My water bill is the easiest bill to pay, even though it adds up. It still is, it's a lot better than my electric bills have increased incredibly. And gas, my gas has tripled and no more use. No more use. I pay triple the amount that I did 2 years ago.
Gas is a commodity.
Yeah, no,
It'll go up and down with
Yeah.
whatever's going on.
So here's what I can do. What I'm hearing from the group is I can present both. I can present a 5 and a 9% to
Yeah.
council. If that it seems like a decent idea to do.
with the argument that, they just emphasize that, that your other facts about the, if we do this much, we're not gonna be able to take care of these
Capital
the
projects.
capital projects that
Right.
we need to take care of. And
Because
that-
for our capital, what I propose, and of course it's still going through a whole lot, what I proposed in new capital spending was $1.345 million.
Because the other side of the capital spending for the water improvements, it ties directly in with the roads.
the
You go
two-way
down
project.
college,
Yeah,
the reason
that
college
goes
is so
back to
bad,
two-way.
it's not being fixed, is because the whole water main needs to be replaced. And until it is, you will never fix that road,
And
and it is barely drivable right now.
And
And
I,
that goes with all those roads up there, and both ends of Main Street that haven't been done yet.
and that's a great example. So Reynolds Avenue, the one we
Mhm,
just
right.
did, you know, that was an AC line. It was an undersized AC line, so it was well worth replacing. And we got a 12-inch main in there. That was a good project. It wasn't a cast. And to go from Fremont Street up to Pear, it's $1 million. That
Yeah.
was $1 million water main project. And so you drive that, it ain't that far.
Right.
And that just gives you an idea of what we're up against. And that was dictated by 2A. Now,
West
those
Street.
were ARPA funds.
There's,
That was just the water line.
That was just the water line.
That didn't include everything else.
See, and it's I constantly get asked, whatever happened to that rate increase that we all pay in? Whatever happened to our road improvements? Because it seems like they're really slow in coming to people's perception is, and it's part of it is because you guys always say, well, we're not gonna replace the road if we don't replace the water because
just
it's
doesn't make any
it's a
sense.
waste of time.
You get a water
Yeah,
main
and
leak
that's-
underneath that and it
That's
blows that whole road up.
that's a huge issue that, you know,
so that there, one of the things that council may do to address that particular issue is we've got a sunset coming up on the 2A street money. And what we may say, may ask the public to do the next time is modify the restriction that the monies are only used for pavement, but to make it so the monies can be used for the entire
for
street
the whole infrastructure kind of thing, yeah.
infrastructure.
Yeah. Because that, you know, that is another issue though, that 1% puts us into such a high sales tax rate. I know there are a lot of people who go out, including people who work for the city and the fire district and the police department, that go out of the area to buy big items because of the sales tax price. And it's like, well, boy, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot then.
Did the city apply for IIJA funds for infrastructure?
In the process of, because it's going through the state revolving. So we're feeling out the process right now. So I think that we put a cap on ourselves for like a $10 million loan. Half of that would be forgiven under the way Colorado's doing it. So they do half loan, half grant. So it's
So
kind
you
of a
didn't apply directly
perpetual.
to the feds, though, just to the
No,
state?
it's going straight through Colorado. So they release the funds to the state and the state releases the funds to entities. So we're looking at that, but that'd be a debt service payment. I think I did write that down too, of $350,000 if we went for all $10 million.
$250 a year,
I'm sorry.
350,000 a year.
Yes. Yeah, that'd be our debt service for that. So, you know, again, when you start talking this stuff,
Get a big chunk,
Yeah, right.
$10
You know,
million,
Right,
right?
and have
but
to give-
it's
Yeah, I know.
grants are a double-edged sword.
Yes.
As most
have
of
to make
us
match.
in this room do know that, you know, when you apply for federal funds, even though it's going through the state, it's still federal funds. You know, you got to go through Davis-Bacon, you got to buy American, which are good things, but it does drive up costs.
Okay,
So you brought up lead in the cast and some
Mm-hmm.
of our joints. Also, we've got the copper lead rule.
Mhm.
Has the wheel turned any on that, Travis?
Slowly but surely. So we do have a company called 120 Water on contract.
Does everybody know what we're talking about?
No.
there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
You're
I'm
gonna,
the only
Dwayne's
one
gonna
who
love
goes
this
to
one.
city council.
Yeah, you're gonna love it. So you want to talk about unfunded mandates, do you?
This-
So they just redid their lead copper rule, which has been a rule since the 70s, I believe, maybe the 80s, it doesn't matter. They just redid it and it was a
They
direct,
use EPA.
yeah, this is EPA. This is a direct response to Flint, Michigan. So
And
what,
it's the ones coming out of the meter, right?
so its service line would be from the water main into the house. So that's your service line.
Right.
What we've always been responsible for was main to water meter. So that's where ownership changes. And then the property owner is responsible from meter into the house. What they want us to do is inventory every single service line all the way to foundation. So we've never paid attention to private property.
And so that
It's
means
a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, and they haven't defined how to do it.
Well, yeah, it wasn't one of the ideas you'd send out these little kits that people could do.
Well, there's a whole lot of
different.
different ways you can do it. So the
Yeah.
way that we're working towards right now is they're taking all the data that we do have, which is very, very little amount. And they're creating basically their GIS map. So you have, and it has to be a publicly searchable map. So when people buy a house, they know whether it has a lead service line or not. And what we're going to do after that, is, the way we're going anyways, is then we'll send out mailers. So everybody who has pre-83, I think was the lead ban, would get a mailer and say, okay, if you get $20 off your bill, you'd have to send us a picture. It's got to be proof, you know, but do you have a lead, galvanized, PVC, whatever that may be, and try to get that amount of data. Okay, so once you have that amount of data of at least maybe a few lead service lines identified, you can run it through some predictive software and say, okay, what are the most likely areas that you're going to have lead? And then you can start saying, okay, these areas are the most likely, choose 10 of them, 10 houses, then we'll go pothole them. All right, then you feed that back in and you just continually, run your model. And hopefully that's what the state will take.
So the goal of this problem, of this program is lead pipe replacement,
Yes,
copper line replacement?
no, lead only.
Lead only.
Well,
Identification.
it goes a little further. So they have several categories:
Yeah.
non-lead, lead, galvanized, needing to be replaced. Galvanized needing to replace currently is defined as any service line that either has or could have lead ahead of it. That could be a big problem for the city because we didn't keep records of what we replaced. We kept records that we did replace, say, you know, from the 30s to the 90s maybe,
Yeah.
that we replaced this section, but we didn't say we replaced
Of
galvanized.
the water system.
So if they say, well, you have galvanized and you have, well, you don't know what it was, you can't articulate what it was, we're gonna say that could be galvanized, needing to be replaced. If that's what they stick to, then we have a few thousand service lines we may need to replace.
Yeah, but see, I mean, I could see this going the way it's lead paint, you know, like if
Yeah.
you're back east, it's a really high probability that your property has lead paint on it.
Sure.
But so you have to have it tested, and then you have to tell whoever is renting your property or buying, you know, that potentially there is lead paint. But you don't have to go in and replace every single window that potential, I mean, you just have to let them know, and maybe it's been encapsulated, or maybe it's, you know, I mean, because that's an improbability that you could ask everybody to replace everything this, I mean, just look at all the properties that are here that probably, and
Sure.
dig up, look what,
Yep.
you know, cast iron, I mean, it's just, it's.
But
Is
but
this
that
relative to
there's,
like a backflow issue?
But I
No,
know, they're
backflow is
telling
totally
you you
different.
have to do it.
Backflow is a whole other,
Right, but you got
Can of worms.
lead pipe, galvanized pipe, and if you're on a main,
yeah.
we're not concerned
We
with
gotta go to your house, copper.
the backflow thing.
Well, every house should be
church
protected for
property.
backflow, you know, every house should be
Yeah, but I'm
protected.
looking
At
at,
the
look at all the.
At the
buildings
meter,
on the
right.
street,
Okay,
look
okay.
at all the
Yeah,
buildings.
should be.
That's what I'm.
Yeah,
Like
should be.
our-
Good work.
our
There's
school,
still
like,
plenty that are not,
place,
and as
right?
we come aware of them, you know,
Okay.
we have people put in their
But
backflow.
copper's not an issue?
Copper so far is not an issue.
As long as the
Okay.
solder,
hang on here, wait a
Yeah.
minute, I got a comment to respond to
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
The issue with the difference between lead paint and lead water pipes.
Right.
Lead water pipes are a proven constant exposure.
sure,
And so it's, the issue with any substance that's harmful to human is exposure. And it's potential exposure with lead paint. Okay, and you can do things to minimize the potential exposure, but with lead lines,
right,
it's actual exposure every day.
right, and I mean, I know for
Repeat,
years,
That's a great point.
for years of being
Yeah.
in the building and owning many old buildings, that they say things like, make sure you run the water a certain amount before you actually use it, because it's just sitting in the water that we're.
Yeah,
that
it's
comes in.
generally
As
the
long as
plumbing.
it's- As long as
in the
it's
house.
running, actively running, that it's
Yeah.
not as much of an issue. I mean, that's been something that's going on for years.
Yeah, and I think that from at least a water purveyor perspective, what I hear from a lot of other people, it's not the fact that, you know, the EPA wants lead out of water. Great, that is admirable and
Right,
it
yeah.
should be done. It's the fact that this has to be done by October 2024 and the rule is not fully defined. That's where the rub comes in, you know, and again, it's a typical thing.
What's the total cost to the city if we just willy-nilly complied with everything the EPA is thinking about?
Well, okay, so I'll go back. Our biggest cost could be from those galvanized needing to be replaced. We're not aware of a large amount of lead service lines on private side, but we're not aware, right? This is our best guess. And our best guess comes from when we have a leak on a service line. Nobody can really remember, except for the old timers, us replacing a lead service line on our side. We've done a pretty good job of getting them out, but unfortunately that means we don't have the best records. But I say that because it's not like we have a ton of service lines, like a Denver has tens of thousands of lead service lines that they know about. We're not in that position.
Right.
What we're in the rough position that if we find lead, it's probably going to be on private side, and this rule will force us to replace that. And we have to pay for it. And that's, well, we may have to pay for it.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
you had a number when you made the presentation to council.
oh yeah, so that and I don't remember that, but it was something like if it was up into the 3,000, I think the average service line replacement on private side runs about 7,000. So I think it
remember
was
like
20
60
some million.
20 million. Oh,
Yeah.
60.
Yeah, and it could have been, I don't remember, and I may
But it's tens of millions of dollars. Is what the
Tens of millions of
problem
dollars.
could
I
be,
know, yeah.
yeah.
you know.
So they made a deadline before the definition.
Well, the okay, the feds have defined, but then the state has to come in because they have primacy and say, okay, this is our interpretation of the rule. This is what we're going to make you do. And the state has not defined. And I'll take that a step further, and the feds have already signaled that they're going to make rule changes before October 24. So anything that we're doing, we're hoping is going to be the right, you have to do something, right? And
What's the consequences if you don't do anything?
well,
Is there fines or something?
you don't want to go up against the EPA.
Well, I know.
You lost.
I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine replacing my service line because it comes out underneath my garage and comes in on the backside of my house.
Well, that's the average is about 7,000, and you might have some that are a couple thousand, but you're gonna have some that are tens of thousands of dollars because they're going under concrete. Or
Tim, if
Like,
they can,
throw a T in there prior, just
if they
abandoned.
can, if they can bore under the railroad, they can bore under your house.
Yeah, you gotta
Under our
get creative.
That's pretty
Get
cool,
creative,
actually.
man.
Yeah,
And turn
Yeah,
it
they-
ahead of
yeah.
I'm
time.
trying to remember.
Come in different.
Dean's
There's
been
a
on
will,
quiet.
there's a way.
Dean knows he already got.
hopefully I'll
Has a
sell
lot
the
of-
place and won't have to deal with it.
If
I'm
you
not
don't do
saying
it
anything.
today, you will pay.
They got Cooper in mind.
Townhouse.
She didn't have.
I'm ready for a townhouse.
It's your mom. and
Yeah.
For sale, Gina was.
I know, like, we have a farm. in Youngstown.
All right, well, that's it, that's
We
really
replaced all the
interesting
galvanized
discussion.
pipe.
I think also with that rate discussion is,
They found her.
what's the cost of repair
Whoa, where'd they find it?
versus
Did they find
I don't
replacement?
know.
So if
Repair.
this, if this burst,
Oh,
I
yeah,
got issues.
right,
You know how
absolutely.
much that costs?
Yeah, way more, especially in the middle of the night, we're paying
I
overtime.
would like to pay
That
Or the
are-
guy-
90%
No.
to get this
Yeah,
done.
You are absolutely right, sir.
And so that's something for discussion too. is,
Yeah.
You know, look at,
Maintenance
Didn't
versus,
say where they
yeah,
found it.
plan,
Because there was a
repair.
strong
Yeah.
speculation.
Yeah.
and then
Boyfriend
if you
who let-
made
I hope,
a
no,
priority
but
of
there was
these
a strong
roads,
controversy.
this has gotta
Oh,
get
the
done
boyfriend.
first.
Boyfriend, yes.
We
Oh,
can systematically
we-
say
that
this is
she
what
was
we're gonna
with.
Oh,
want.
right.
Before that,
What happened in
in a
Pueblo is
motel
they
room
did
somewhere
Curry
up
Avenue,
north.
I didn't
right there
remember.
by the fair.
Oh, yeah, that was
They
an
went
old
through
story.
and paved it,
The Denver Post.
and
Yeah.
then the
I
water
never heard
came
that.
through.
Yeah.
And they
Oh, no,
redid
there
it
was a whole
and
story. She
replaced
had,
all the
she had
water
an active
after they
boyfriend, and
just
he was,
replaced
and he was.
So the
All
race
right,
track.
well, I think we gave
Yeah.
That was.
And
to throw them off
it's
the
like, who did this?
Probably.
And
the
why?
council,
Well,
I think we
because
gave
they
our
knew they had
views for
funding
council anyway.
And
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
just kind of a
You
mockery.
gotta stay on top.
Well,
of
yeah,
that.
I mean, because it really is, it
To the
turns into
citizen.
it, yeah,
Yes.
it's wasted money.
Well,
It's,
you're
So
living with
if,
the roads.
if we
Yeah.
have a plan to say, hey, we're gonna come in.
Right, and
we're gonna
that's,
You
Then
know,
you're
you're
just,
behind.
and then we're gonna
you
redo
just
it.
do a road and then tear it up to
We look
redo
classy
like the
as a
water.
city.
right,
Right.
well, I mean, look at
Coordinated as a
the,
city.
they had to do
Do it
that on
this
Main
way.
Street. and
Agreed.
they cut
While
into
we're
it.
in here, who's the
The
gas?
waters,
Or anybody
water
else
supplies
that's
for
under
the
there?
Yeah.
fire system.
Storm sewer guys.
Totally
let's all
right, so-
jump on board.
So roads is
Exactly.
not a project.
And they generally do
It's
now,
everything.
And then we're gonna,
And
we're
that-
gonna put down
that
some new
section,
blacktop.
that's-
and
that's-
look
Yeah.
at how everybody's
and then we
happy.
got 30 years and we don't have to worry
So
about it.
hopefully, you know, look at,
Bite your hand.
hopefully,
Bite
you
your
know, that's
face.
what we're going for is 30 years. But
Okay.
yeah,
Agreed.
It's just
Let's
amazing.
come back
Yeah.
together here.
Just-
So,
then.
yeah,
just
what
for
else we
example,
need to talk, what else
right
does
in front of
Travis
Board of
need us to
Waterworks,
solve?
their wood water pipe burst.
John, we got anything else? 'Cause I got, speaking of water, I got irrigation water. I gotta change.
Okay, so do we have anything else we need to discuss?
No, that was the long and short of it.
I would, as a council person and not necessarily as a member of the committee, But I'd recommend that you do your 5%, 8%, and 14%. Because that then lines up with the water study we do have at hand. It's at 3% and 9%.
Yeah,
And so with inflation, do nothing, do something, and try and stay even.
Yeah,
That's a good,
can
that's a
do.
good plan.
yeah, it's not too bad to run all three.
And just speaking
I think I
tactically,
even
it
did
doesn't
that.
hurt to have a 14% number float out there in front of the public when you're gonna do something small.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, no, that's true.
That's,
True.
that's true.
It's the
But it's a
get it
real
done
number.
factor.
It's a real
Get it
number.
figured out.
Let's get it done.
I can
Okay.
do that. I can do that. 'Cause I think I
Then
even,
we'll see you
I
all
did.
in a month. We've got a couple of, let me just run over this real quick. You're gonna talk about
awesome.
Jesse about a potential cleanup project. You're gonna check on the Colorado Water Resources Control Board on grant terms.
CWCB, yep.
Demo project at the PD, that's a question. We'll kind of go up, we'll
Or
figure
maybe
that out
just like
after we hear.
where
about
maybe
it.
another space maybe. I mean, I
Okay,
think it should be something easily accessible that people can drive by
Sure,
and look at, you know,
sure.
not something difficult, otherwise you're just wasting your time.
It already has an irrigation
Yeah.
there, which is helpful.
Okay, I'm gonna call Rex about the duck pond and how that's coming out with all the pond reaching
Yeah,
and
well,
stuff
they
that's
need it.
going on. And then you're gonna send us the 2018 water rate study.
Yep.
Okay,
And I will check on the Neptune water consumption for water users.
okay,
Sounds good.
So the
Great.
next meeting will be that last Wednesday in October, which I believe is the 25th.
Yeah, how is Blake when he reached out to me saying he couldn't make it? He indicated that Wednesdays were becoming problematic for him.
Okay.
oh, really?
Does anybody have issues or concerns with moving it off a day? Or I think it was tough to even come up with Wednesday. So I think that if we have to leave it Wednesday, that's fine. I'm
It's
just
nice to
asking the
have Blake
question.
come. The
Last
last
week of the month works for me.
Yeah,
That's
last
the
week of the
only
month
day
is
I
good.
have is
Um,
Wednesday.
Is Wednesday? Okay.
I won't
There
make
you go.
it the 25th because I'm gonna be an election judge.
Oh yeah, 25th.
And I won't be here the 25th.
I
I'll be
will
one of
be
those
here the
people.
25th.
I'll be in San Diego.
What about people's calendars on Fridays? Fridays
Friday
work for
meetings
you
are
all?
tough.
Yeah, Friday.
I
nights
have-
are tough.
Meetings scattered Fridays,
Do you?
sometimes they're all day, sometimes they're in the morning.
Yeah.
Fridays
We're
are as
looking
bad
for
as any other day
November.
for me.
Okay.
Fridays are hard, tough for me to get away.
Are we looking for November Friday?
No, we're talking in general here. to
Oh,
try
just
and
for
see if we
recurring.
can't get,
I mean,
uh,
if I know it's coming, I can do my best.
Well, yeah.
That-
Be in the
That's the other,
afternoons
the
as
other,
well?
so.
Yeah, same time.
What is the last, so what is
Like
the
2
last
o'clock
weekend?
Fridays?
When does Thanksgiving fall this year? It's the third Thursday, right? So how's
Yeah, the 23rd.
yeah.
23rd, so it'd be the week after that,
Where-
would be
The
still be November,
24th is.
Yeah.
the following Wednesday.
Whatever.
That's usually,
Beth, what can you make? Because you're closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
that's okay. I'm elected dad. We came back early from, we were on a trip around looking at the fall foliage and we just came back early. So
Where was it turning?
it was pretty good up in Crested Butte. I heard it's better north of there.
Yeah.
Crested Butte is midway, but down south here, there's not much going on, but there's also a lot of stuff that's just brown already. It's all
Yeah,
down.
it's
We were
dry.
in Durango
Well,
last weekend, not much
Yeah,
at all.
They got a
I don't
hard
know,
frost.
it looks like it's been raining everywhere. I'm talking about rain down in the San Luis Valley. I've never seen so many asters.
Yeah, it's been
Uh,
raining off and on.
Hang on, let's talk,
Sorry, back to you.
schedule here.
Yeah.
So did Blake have a suggestion about what would work there?
Anything but Wednesday. He lost childcare on Wednesday. So
Oh,
yeah,
Just
that's.
tell them to bring the kid in.
Yeah, there you go. There you
Yeah,
go. So,
fine.
I think that not moving it is fine.
okay.
It sounds like it might be tough to come to a consensus,
maybe
and
going
that's,
into the
that's an
new
okay
year, maybe
thing.
we
I
can
just,
figure
again, was
something
asking the
out.
question.
I think the
Okay.
city should pay for a babysitter for them.
All right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, let me see if I can help. I watched.
There you go.
Okay, thank you all for
Okay,
being
thank
here,
you.
and we'll see you in a month.